Hey everyone, this is Tom Salemi. Happy New Year. Happy 2022. Welcome back to the Device Talks weekly podcast. It's great to connect with you again. We have a full show for you today. We'll have Chris Newmarker in just a little bit with his first Newmarker's Newsmakers of the year. But we're going to focus most of this episode on the plans that Olympus has to build out its medical device business. Olympus is a company, of course, that we've all followed for quite some time. But I didn't know enough about it. Now I do. Thank you. Thanks to my interviews with Nacho Abia, the COO, and Gabriela Kaynor. She's the global division head of the therapeutic solutions division in the Americas. And we talked a great deal about Olympus's plans to expand in the medical device industry. I learned that it's been in devices for quite some time. And of course, I knew they were a player in medical devices, but I didn't realize how long they've been in the field. And Nacho Abia will explain Olympus's history, where it's been, where it is, and where it's going. It's built out its corporate development program, it has a corporate venture program, and it's moving in an exciting direction. So happy to bring you that story. Happy to bring you Chris Newmarker. He and I talk a bit. We sound more like a podcast for someone whose puppy just got hit by a car, but we pick it up toward the end. It's been a long holiday break for all of us. But we'll get our energy and our zap back, I promise. We're really grateful to be part of the medtech conversation and very happy to have you here listening to the Device Talks weekly podcast. We sprinkle some news throughout the podcast. We talk about the conferences and podcasts, other podcasts and such. So I will not delay any further. Thanks for returning to the Device Talks weekly podcast. We look forward to bringing you many great episodes and many great podcasts in 2022. All right, you ready for this?
Ready.
Well, Chris Newmarker, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, 2022. Here we are.
2022, we made it. We're hoping for a slight improvement over 2021, right? Just kind of a slow, continuing increase of the happiness graph.
Now, Tom, I hope that 2022 is everything that we hope to dream 2021 would be.
That would be wonderful.
That is my beginning of the New Year hope. So, or my happy thought.
You seem a little sedate. Are you a little tired? You've got anything going on over there at the house that's wearing you out a little bit?
Yeah, we've got our youngest kids home right now. So yes, the preschool is clearing out. So as we go through Omicron. So oh man, but yeah. So I'm just hoping this is it. Hopefully this is like the last really like huge shebang of this. I mean, pandemic might last for longer, but hopefully things just start getting better.
2021 is beginning to 2022 is looking familiar to 2021. We're banging out Device Talks Tuesday, so we'll definitely be having at least a couple of dozen of those. So virtual stuff still kicking. We are, though, going to do our in-person meetings, as we've talked about before. We still have Boston scheduled in May, Minneapolis in June, and certainly this doesn't help in Santa Clara in October.
Yeah, that's right. Let's do it.
But hopefully we'll be through this.
Let's rock and roll.
Through this in a couple of weeks. Rocking and rolling. We got speakers up there on the website, so people should totally check it out.
It's going to get better.
So yes, 2022 will be a much better version of 2021.
It's going to be wonderful. We're starting right now at the low point, and it's just going to, get better. Right. And it's just, we're going to have these events. I'm also talking to you probably at like the coldest day of the year here in Minnesota. It's like, I think it's like negative 10 degrees outside.
That's right lovely. Now, so, that's lovely.
So it's going to get warmer here. We're going to have events. It's going to be great, man. And the Minnesota Twins are going to win the World Series.
You heard it here, folks, ladies and gentlemen.
I've got my crystal ball here. It's going to happen. Actually, that's too much to ask for. It's just not going to. The big guy upstairs is like, listen, you're putting me through too much here now. I've got a lot of things to do right now.
I can only perform so many miracles. But let us not look forward, yes. Chris Newmarker. Let us look back into the week of news, our first full week of MedTech news here. And of course, your Newmarker's Newsmakers, top 5 stories.
Newsmakers.
Yay! Bring in Godzilla. There he is. All right. Godzilla has sounded off, kicked off 2022. What is number 5
Man,
on?
he sounds like he's a little stopped up. I mean, maybe he should take a test or something.
I ain't
Oh,
swabbing those nostrils, my friend.
Well, it's like
You can
ruffles
go up
your
there.
hair with the nostril breath, and nostril snort.
I've swabbed more nostrils than I care to remember, and I'm not going up to Godzilla's nostrils. No, sir.
Yeah, I'd have to get a hazmat suit on to crawl to that nostril.
What is number 5
Oh my gosh.
on this vaunted list, Chris Newmarker?
Well, number 5 on the list, we've got some cool robotic surgery news. We've got Memic Innovative Surgery saying that they have 3 U.S.-based facilities that have acquired their Hominis robot-assisted surgical system. So, and this is, for those who don't know, it's an Israel-based company, and this is... like they tout this robot as the first and only FDA authorized surgical robot with it's got like miniature humanoid shaped arms with shoulder, elbow, and wrist joints. So it provides like human level dexterity and articulation that's 360 degrees. So yeah, really interesting robots.
Absolutely.
So
They have Maurice Ferre formerly of Mako, of course, co-founder of Mako, is their chairman, and he was on the podcast last year. I can say that last year. And good for them that they're moving in. And Maurice is down in Florida, so it makes sense that they would kind of have their beachhead down there. And we're picking up where we left off, huh? Robotics, more robotics.
It was a really hot space in 2021, and it's going to be a really hot space in 2022.
And of course, we'll have our Healthcare Robotics Engineering Forum co-located with the Device Talks Boston meeting on May 10th and 11th. So you can find out information about that on devicetalks.com.
Be there or be square.
Absolutely. What is number 4, Chris Newmarker?
Hey, number 4 on the list, we've got GE Healthcare is collaborating with Boston Scientific on cardiac care in Southeast Asia. And they're touting this as a first of its kind collaboration. So kind of neat. I'm really curious. Like, are they going to be doing stuff like this in other parts of the world as well?
Yes, it'll be interesting to see if this becomes a model for collaborations in other areas. It'd be interesting to learn more about how they came together. So maybe it's something we'll chase down in a future podcast. Certainly, we'll be talking to Mike Mahoney at Device Talks Boston. I know I keep going back to the conferences, but we're happy to have him as a keynote on May 10th. So we'll definitely ask about that then.
Yeah, but kind of neat. I mean, they're pairing Boston Scientific's medical devices and capabilities with GE Healthcare medical imaging systems, including their cardiac cath lab and related software. So yeah, it's kind of like the end of Casablanca, where it's like this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship, and we'll see how it goes.
Absolutely. Cool. Gabriela Kaynor, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Tom. Thank you for having me here. It's exciting.
Actually, it is. I'm really excited to learn more about Olympus. We have had Nacho Abia on the program as well. He really covered things from a higher perspective, but I'm a Boston guy. I'm eager to hear what's going on in Westboro, and I want to understand that part of Olympus is that you're leading up. But first, we always like to know how our guests found their way into the medtech industry. You've been doing this for a little bit.
Yes, I have, Tom. So I've been with Olympus for a little bit over 5 years, but honestly, I've been in the medical device industry for over 20 years, my whole career. I'm very lucky and had the good fortune of learning and starting my career with some great companies such as J&J and Covidien, and learning from great leaders. And in the year 2016, I joined Olympus, and this was an opportunity to come in and help be part of building something new. And undergoing, having a company that was undergoing like a big transformation was something that honestly I hadn't specifically done in my career. And there was an interesting part of the opportunity of, kind of designing that blueprint and being able to still make a difference in patient care and providing meaningful, clinical and economic value to our customers is a central part of success in any med device. But the transformation, culture change and innovation all mixed together was really what attracted me to Olympus.
I bet. Well, going back to your start in medtech, what was the allure or the entry point? Well, why did you choose this industry?
Well, to be honest with you, as with everything, I think there's always a certain amount of luck that is associated. I'm originally from Guatemala, and I married my husband from Boston. So I moved here to the United States and was really lucky that my first job out of engineering school was with J&J.
Wow.
And, it's one of these things that I grabbed onto the opportunity and never looked back and never have considered, being outside of the med device industry. It really is now for me a passion, and I don't know anything else.
No, it's tough to, I would imagine it's tough to transition. I've started covering it 20 something years ago, and I can't imagine doing anything else. Yeah, let's talk about Olympus because it's really going through an interesting transformation. And again, in my conversation with Nacho Abia, he educated me on how long Olympus has been in medtech, and it's something I guess I knew, but I wasn't really cognizant of because it seems like one of those companies that has been operating on my periphery at least. Talk a bit about Olympus's new focus and its mission. What does Olympus want to be?
We always welcome the opportunity to talk about that because, myself included, before being tapped on the shoulder, I didn't really understand all of the different areas and segments of the market that Olympus played in. I think now over the last 5 years, but in the last 3, really, we've really been focusing and understanding across the continuum and the different specialties. Where can we really have that greatest impact? Where do we really have a right to win? And where do we feel that if we look at the ability of being successful at making a difference in patients' life and healthcare, that we had that focus? And so that transformation effort for us has really been part of looking outside and not really letting the technology and innovation, which has been core part of the success for Olympus for, the last 100 years, but now trying to expand outside of endoscopy, where in some areas, innovation is also happening very quickly around us, looking at really using a different lens, if you will. And instead of looking at just the technology and endoscopy, looking at, the disease areas of focus where we know we have unmet needs and a right to win as Olympus. And then finding those opportunities within that continuum and along that patient care pathway, but again, focused on those disease areas that we know that we can really win.
And what is your the area where you're a leader, TSD? Tell us a bit about the division. What products do you cover? What diseases do you target?
For Olympus, we're, the TSD division is roughly $2.5 billion division.
Mm-hmm.
And we're playing across multiple clinical specialties, including urology, GI endotherapy, respiratory, surgical devices, ENT, and gynecology. So it's a pretty broad area. The medical strategy and our own TSD strategy are key areas of focus identified as urology, GI endotherapy, and respiratory. And we're really looking to, from a mission perspective, is, being able to deliver, profitable and sustainable growth. And really, we can only do that by looking across all of our specialties again and identifying those solutions and unmet needs and really doubling down with focus and priority in those specific areas. But, another area that I want to mention for us in TSD is that aside from having more focused efforts and investments, since the inception of TSD, which is really only 3 years ago, looking at the markets around us, but also from a competitive perspective, what are some of the areas that if we want to focus more on therapeutic or device side, what do we need to do? And so in parallel, again, to identifying, the unmet needs and solutions, we've really tried to do a lot around improving our capabilities around single-use products, because traditionally, again, Olympus innovation has been centered around, endoscopy and more the capital side. So becoming more agile in the way that we, develop and commercialize, the single-use devices and solutions for our customers has been, a key area of focus. It's not just R&D as one element, but really if you look at all throughout the supply chain continuum, there's a lot of different areas around procurement, partnerships, distribution, and commercialization. And then internally, also really focus in, as an example, our medical safety teams and healthcare economics, for us to be able to provide the solutions that are, clinically and economically differentiated. We need to improve in our ability to have the data, the clinical capabilities internally to be able to deliver that. And then to have a commercial approach that is more value-based than maybe traditionally. So all of these elements around therapeutic solution division that I'm mentioning are the internal transformation that we've been undergoing to enable our capabilities more so on the therapeutic side or device side, if you will.
So what goes into sort of developing those skill sets and to becoming, again, a global medtech leader? What's going on in terms of bringing new people inside? And after that, I'd love to find out how you worked with the culture of the folks who are already working at Olympus.
Sure. So, it's been, I think, one of the most exciting parts of kind of making this magic happen, right? We've brought in a lot of talented people in different specific areas, some of the functions that perhaps didn't even exist at Olympus, 5 years ago, to make sure that we have the capabilities to build. But in parallel to that, there's a lot of capability building that we've done internally with training, developing business processes, the right level of governance to make sure that we have cross-functional collaboration that happens at the right times, that everyone is still being able to have a seat at the table, if you will, and that we're learning along the way. This is a lengthy process because the new talent or new processes that we're infusing, that's a small percentage, right? The magic really happens when we take the expertise, the engineering, the innovation, the commercial relationships that we have with our HCPs in key areas, and we're evolving and changing that culture, which takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. And part of it is really shifting that mentality from working more as functional silos at times, and perhaps reflecting on 5 years ago when I started, we were operating much more as regions and making decisions about portfolio strategy more on a regional level. And now we're doing that cross-functionally and cross-regionally. That doesn't come without its growing pains, right? Because it's, culture change, but I think it's been very well received, and we have great teams globally that we're all learning together to evolve.
So one of the big moves you made was opening an office, a headquarters outside of Japan in the US. You're in my neck of the woods, Westboro, Massachusetts. Talk a bit about that building, about the opening and what it represents.
So we've had, as a region, I would say, a pretty strong presence in the Massachusetts area for quite some time. But we didn't really have any global presence. And certainly when we started our division 3 years ago, we made a claim and we said, we're going to be headquartered in Boston. At the time, honestly, I think there were maybe 15 of us that were part of the global division in the Westboro facility. As we have continued to grow, not just as a global division, but also our presence in the market and our commercial footprint in the US, obviously our regional team has continued to thrive and grow. So having this Westboro facility, which is a brand new building, is something that I think is really special. Number one is we're committed to improving our value chain here in the United States. And that includes not just the commercial front, but again, every global function. And obviously, Massachusetts is a great area to attract, talent, to, have so many universities around us, so much med device movement happening in the Boston area. So that's really, really exciting for us. I will tell you though that, from a global perspective, it really, to me, especially with this pandemic, continues to reinforce and demonstrate that, we have a global team. Our headquarters are here in Massachusetts, but the reality is that, we have talent across the globe, and we depend on that collaboration with all of the functions in all of the regions to really be able to accomplish our mission.
I wonder, did the industry's necessary reaction to the lockdown, the working remotely, how did that impact sort of the transformation of Olympus? You're right, it can slow you down in that you're not having people in your new headquarters in Westboro. But on the flip side, we're all learning to work better no matter where we are. How has that worked out?
I would say that without a doubt, for us, it helped accelerate things in a couple of different ways. One very simple way that I can share with you is that, before the pandemic, because we were so regionally focused initially, we each had different systems, right? Mm-hmm. And we were doing a lot of traveling, which was inefficient. And we were waiting a lot of times to, if I was going to Tokyo once a month, we were waiting to have key discussions until I was there, right? Or vice versa. We would have our executive committee meetings and board meetings, once a month live, everyone traveling from everywhere in the world. Well, literally within 30 days of the pandemic, we all were able to deploy, Microsoft 365 and had Teams platform globally across, every site. Mm-hmm. And I am quite positive that this would have never happened with that speed without, the pandemic. And so, one of the important and relevant things about that story and why I'm sharing is because, with the cultural differences, a lot of times, there's a language barrier, and just being able to see each other face to face, if not in presence via the cameras and Teams, allows for there to be some sort of, feedback from body language. It's like, am I, landing the right way? Or am I being understood? And to be able to still build relationship without traveling. And now looking back, I haven't been to Tokyo for almost 2 years.
Wow.
And so this is really, I can't imagine if I didn't have the technology that we have today, I think we wouldn't have accomplished so much. But that gave us an instant ability to say, well, we don't need to wait until we go to Tokyo. We can have a very effective personal communication with video. And mm-hmm. I think that has been really transformative for us. And that's just one example, but I think there are many.
Are you missing those frequent flyer miles?
It was a lot of heavy travel for probably 3 years before COVID. So the first year, I'm not going to lie, was really nice to be close to family, but I'm ready to have things open back up for sure.
Knock wood. The last question is looking forward. What is TST become and how do you get there? Or what are you looking for in terms of growth into new markets? And does it come through acquisition, through internal? How do you see things sort of playing out?
So, I think it's a combination of many things, but as I explained from a medical strategy perspective, but also TSD, our focus areas are, primarily urology, respiratory, and GI endotherapy. And when I think about the change, we are certainly going to continue refining our strategy and developing, the solutions that are necessary in that patient care pathway lens. In those three areas, we have a very exciting pipeline of products that we are launching. We have two exciting acquisitions that happened within the last 12 months with Baron Technologies and Meditate, one in our respiratory and one in our urology field that we're in the process of integrating and really trying to capture and maximize the synergies. From a structure or operating model perspective, we are continuing to invest in our, medical and scientific affairs, skills and capabilities and making the right investments there. And our capabilities and enablement of those capabilities, the great news is that now, as announced in our medical strategy, it's now being done at a more global and broad level that we're really fine-tuning our procurement, supply chain, and manufacturing, functions at a global level to try and, maximize synergies and refine our processes, become more and more competitive. Same thing with research and development. And some of our, key areas such as quality assurance and regulatory affairs. And so, I'm excited that, we have the right plans in place from a strategy perspective, but then also, to be able to execute on those strategies, we need a lot of these functions and help. And, finally, specifically as you asked about organic and inorganic and what are some of the levers, we really in TSD have been utilizing BD in a broad way, not just traditional M&A, but looking at distribution agreements. Sometimes it's just, we have a certain regional market where we need to expand the bag and distribution agreement makes sense. A certain partnership for commercial expansion. So we really look at business development more broadly that way. And we're using, all of the different levers that we can, including we just had the opportunity to announce our new investments through the CVC. I think that this is with corporate ventures is a great way for us to be looking at, early stage technology and placing different bets in exciting areas that, we simply don't have the resources or the reach internally to do ourselves. So we're using all of those levers. And in a broader sense, from a portfolio perspective, as Olympus and as TSD, we still have a very strong presence in our surgical device group, gynecology, ENT, and, our customers and Olympus depends on those areas to continue building our portfolios and continue serving our customers in those areas as well.
Terrific. Well, I look forward to tracking Olympus's story in the future. And thank you for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you, Tom. It's my pleasure to be here. And thank you for having me.
All right, Chris Newmarker, what is number 3 on the Newmarker's Newsmakers list?
Number 3, there was some reimbursement wins for our Relievant Medsystems, which it's based right here in Minneapolis. They've got their Intercept device, which it's used in a minimally invasive procedure to provide like a radio frequency based ablation, that targets a specific nerve in order to provide some chronic low back pain relief. So they got 2 new Category 1 CPT codes in effect. So that's some really some good news for them. I mean, it's like, we've heard over the years. I mean, it used to be you just had to get a device cleared or approved, and now getting that whole reimbursement game of trying to get actual coverage, get the devices paid for, can be very hard as well. So a good win for them, trying to expand use of their device.
And it's a great example of medical devices sort of stepping in to treat pain and hopefully keep people away from addictive substances and provide them with the relief they need, because
exactly.
Back pain is just among the worst for sure. All right, well, what is number 2 on the list, Chris?
Number 2 on the list. More. Guess which field this is, Tom?
Robots.
Bingo! Ding, 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 ding. Yeah, it's Titan Medical. They completed their final milestone in their development agreement with Medtronic. So they've successfully completed their work that they agreed to do with Medtronic. So it's good story. Good story for them. In fact, their interim president CEO Paul Catford called this a significant achievement for the company. That they've completed the final milestone here. So yeah, good news for Titan Medical. Another company that's seeking to innovate in this really competitive, interesting space.
That's great. And speaking of surgical robotics, I completed my last interview with Intuitive Surgicals for the most recent, or the interview for the most recent episode of the Intuitive Talks podcast. It is the last of the 4 initial interviews or podcasts that we scheduled, but we will be doing more in 2022. And we focused on the Ion system, which was very cool.
Neat.
Yeah. So looking at lung biopsies and using robots to pull them out of difficult places to reach. So it was a great conversation, and we should have that out next week.
That's really amazing. I mean, it's definitely we cover all these different companies in the space that are doing stuff, but still Intuitive is still the dominant company, and they're just and I think it's just so fascinating that you're doing all these interviews with people inside of Intuitive, and we kind of get a really good idea of why they're the big company in this space.
Absolutely, and hopefully we'll follow up with more Intuitive Talks podcasts, and we'll have more Medtronic Talks podcasts as well, and maybe we'll have one talking about Hugo again with hopefully some good news from Medtronic with Hugo in 2022.
Do you think, are we going to have talks with another company? Can we
no, let's hold up. No, just keep going.
All right.
There is news a brewing. I will confirm that. There is news a brewing, and it will be.
Stay tuned.
Awesome. So, all right, let us go into number 1 on the Newmarker's Newsmakers.
Number 1, drum roll. We've got hey, we're starting out the year with another multi-billion-dollar acquisition.
This is amazing.
Yeah, we got Stryker spending $3.1 billion to acquire Vocera, Communications, and this is their business is digital care coordination, communications offerings. They've got their hands-free Vocera smart badge. Stryker, people definitely, think of it very much as being like an ortho device company. I mean, they're the largest orthopedic device company in the world, but, they're really getting involved with, care management, with digital health offerings, inside, healthcare locations. So it's, just a really neat acquisition. BTIG analyst Ryan Zimmerman, said that he thought this acquisition was a natural fit for the company. So like he was saying, the combination of products such as their paired beds, ambulation equipment, patient transport, go hand in hand. With what Stryker's doing. So yeah, really exciting. It's kind of like medtech companies are really morphing from just being equipment product companies to really being hey, we are a a knee management company, a joints management company, a hip management company, like whatever your focus was, it isn't just products. You're really, seeking to really provide services through that whole continuum of care and make that your business. So yeah, really neat.
We had talked about this with Kevin Lobo, CEO Kevin Lobo, when he was in the podcast in December, and Group President Andy Pierce. And it was an interesting something that I hadn't thought of, just the role of the hospital bed, which sounds like a mundane piece of equipment. Really isn't. If you've got a patient in the bed for that period of time, you have all this opportunity to connect with them digitally and to track their progress, obviously their health, collect important data. So it's really fascinating that Stryker is sort of moving into that space, whereas when you have Zimmer sort of moving, as you mentioned, into the sensor space, and Stryker obviously has its sensors as well, there's definitely going to be, we're just at the beginning of sort of putting all these data streams together. And I wonder what these companies will look like in 3 or 4 years. It's going to be certainly interesting for us to watch. Well, Nacho, Abia, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Tom.
My pleasure. So I'm excited to learn more about Olympus. It's been one of those companies out in my mental sort of periphery. I know you're in medtech, but I haven't had a lot of conversations with the company. And I know we're going to talk about your move into medtech in a few minutes. And I want to understand where you're headed. But first, I'd like to understand how you got here specifically, how you found your way into the medical device industry. What was your start?
Well, I think this has a lot to do with the evolution of Olympus as a medical technology company, right? So I joined the company 20 years and a half ago. So I'm going to be my first year's anniversary soon. My first job was as the CEO of the Iberia region in Spain, based in Barcelona. That's where I am born and raised, and that's where Olympus found me. So I joined the company in 2001, and the reason that I joined the company, or the reason why the company hired me, is essentially because of my background. I worked for Sony Corporation, and I worked in consumer electronics, and they were looking for someone with that background in consumer electronics, because at that time, the largest business of the company was the camera, the consumer camera and audio products that we had. Funny enough, when I joined the company and then I went to the company the first days, I realized that actually the consumer business still was not with us. It was in the hands of a distributor. For contractual reasons, we couldn't touch it for the next 2 years. So I found myself managing a medical device company. I had really no clue about that. It was a fantastic immersion for me, because at that time, the businesses that we were the first 2 years, I was managing just pretty much the medical business and the life science business that we still have. And it was a fantastic immersion for me. I mean, the folks did a great job for me, taking me to procedures, teaching me everything that they could teach me. And it was a great way to start with that. And since then, I think many things have happened. And nowadays, Olympus is a medical device company. 90% of what we do is that. And we have been evolving. And then after Spain, I moved to Germany, to our headquarters in Hamburg for almost 4 years, and then in 2011 I got one of those offers that you cannot reject. So I say, would you mind to go to the US for a while? I mean, you just check and do some job we have for you there, and say, okay, well, if it's just for a while. And here I am 10 years later, and my family and I love this country, and we decided this is home. So
wonderful.
That's kind of my history.
Did you, at any point when you realized you'd be running a medical device company, was there a moment of, this isn't what I signed up for, I want to go back to consumers? Or did you immediately find a groove and an affinity to medical devices?
I think that it has been certain aha moments. I think that I have to recognize that the first month, and it was like really surprised. I mean, this industry is a fascinating industry, but you need to understand it, and you need to understand how it works and the entire ecosystem. But after a short while, I really fell in love with the medical device industry, and I always use or paraphrase something that I was told. I think years ago, we were doing some sort of activity here in our headquarters in Pennsylvania, and we were asking our folks what kind of job you do, what business you are in. And I remember one technician from our endoscopy division to say, "Well, I'm in the business of saving lives." And honestly, I think that I thought a lot about this. And I think this was what got me what engaged me in the medical device industry from the very beginning, right? So this is a fascinating industry that makes a difference in the world. And what the medical device industry has been able to do in the evolution in the last many years, but specifically the last 20 years, is amazing, right? What technology has been done to provide a better life for people and a more quality of life is fascinating. And it's so very rewarding to be part of it, right? So very rewarding to be part of the thing. So I think I quickly fell in love with that. And then very quickly after that, I declared myself as a medical technology guy.
Well, we're happy to have you. So I'd love to now learn more about Olympus. As I said, I've obviously heard of it in the medtech context. I remember at a time when interventional pulmonology was a big thing. I think Olympus had moved in and purchased one of the companies, Spiration. I know Olympus is big in single-use endoscopes, which is an enormous area, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But give us a snapshot, if you would, of the areas, or an overview of the areas that Olympus currently resides in medical devices. And then after that, I kind of want to follow the decision to really make medical devices your primary business.
Let me back up a little bit and give you a little bit of history for the company, because this will give you the context to understand who we are today, right? So we Olympus has been in medical devices since 1952.
Okay.
So 70 years, right? So
just a little
70
bit.
70 years doing medical devices. But the company is even older than that. I mean, the company was founded in Japan in 1990, and the first product that we produced was actually a microscope.
Oh.
It was a big thing. It was the first time that it was our entering in the, I would say, life science world at that time, right? So it was the first time that Japanese manufacturing. At that time, the market was dominated by German producers, and it was the first time that a Japanese manufacturer entered into the optical world. So this was the first product, and then it followed some other products in the life science segment. In 1937, we entered in the camera business thanks to our know-how in optics. And in 1950, we started developing with a doctor from one hospital in Japan contacted us and said, look, you know how to do cameras, you know how to do microscopes. I need to see inside the body of my patients. And if possible, I wouldn't like to open them in order to see what happened there. So would it be possible to put a camera on the tip of some tube so we can see? And this was the beginning of endoscopy. So 2 years later, we launched the first commercial gastro camera, which literally, right? So it's a tube with some sort of illumination and a small camera in the tip, where the doctor could make some pictures of the stomach and then analyze all those images and take decision, right? So this was the beginning of Olympus as a medical device company, and this is 1952. Since then, these three businesses, right? So what we call today scientific solutions, the consumer business, and the medical business has run in parallel. And for many years, the three businesses has similar sizes. I would say probably from a revenue perspective, the consumer business was the largest. And then at some point, the consumer business also, it started even to grow a lot because of the digitalization of the camera. It was a transition from silver halide to the digital cameras in the 90s. And then in the 2000, it was probably the cusp of all that market. And then guess what? The smartphones came in, the iPhone was launched, and as fast as that market grew, that market declined. We experienced years of a very sharp decline, and the smartphones were taking over the traditional camera market. These were the years where at the same time that this was happening, our medical business was booming. Mm-hmm. And all the revenue that we were losing because of this continuous shrinking of the camera business were compensated by the growth we had in medical. And obviously, the company took the decision that it was very obvious that the camera business was going to, if not to disappear, definitely to diminish considerably. So the company took the decision to invest massively in the medical device industry and make that business our main business today. So this is kind of the history where we have. So for many people, we still talk with people who say, well, it's Olympus in the medical devices. Yes, for only 70 years, right? So
great added to that.
But it's true that our branding has been built based on the camera business. And for many years, we did tons of investment in advertising in the camera products, and that's what many people know Olympus still for their cameras, right? So that's where we came into the medical devices business. So within medical, what do we have today and the different specialties that we are in? The origin of everything is obviously the endoscopical access. I mean, all. I mean, most of the products that we have now, we're expanding that portfolio, is coming from what we call early diagnosis and minimal invasive treatment, and it's based on the fact that we provide minimal invasive access through endoscopes, right? So either flexible endoscopes or rigid endoscopes, right? This is what we do, and then let's say once we are inside, then we can bring our devices and do whatever therapies are appropriate in the different procedures. This is kind of in summary what we do, and that from a specialty point of view, this leads to, again, anything that require or is workable through endoscopic access. So we are very strong in GI and all kind of GI diseases, obviously, but we are also pretty strong in respiratory diseases, which again, our endoscopic access is crucial. We are very powerful in urology, more in the rigid scope side. We have a very strong franchise in surgical imaging, laparoscopy, mostly, and derived from that, we also have surgical devices, electrosurgery devices, etc. for that. And finally, we are also very strong in ENT. And all that, as you can imagine, I mean, the origin of that is this endoscopic access, this minimal invasive access. But then, thanks to this call point with the relation we have developed for years with physicians, we've been able to add things to our portfolio that help them to do the job, moving not only from the visualization portion to the therapy session, but to the therapy portion. So that's what the areas where we are today. And if I have to mention the three that probably today we are leading is clearly in GI, urology, and respiratory are the areas where we are really making a difference, and we are leading those spaces.
So what have the past 2 years been like at the company as you sort of reposition and refocus or focus on medical devices? Has it required a significant change in sort of the internal operations, the feelings, the culture, or is this really just kind of showing the world how Olympus already saw itself?
There's been some significant changes in the way we work it. I think that 2.5 years ago, our new CEO, Mr. Takeuchi, was appointed. And he came, I mean, he was a veteran. At the time he was appointed, he was a veteran of almost 40 years in the company. But he came with a very disruptive and an aggressive agenda of change. His mantra essentially were in two areas, right? So he wanted Olympus to be, number one, medical device company, and he wanted this to be recognized. He wanted this to be the main business. So he wanted our efforts, investments, and resources to be devoted to the medical devices or the medical technology part. That's number one. Number two, he wanted really to globalize the company and make the company from a very powerful, solid Japanese international company to truly global enterprise that can operate with all over the world, with utilizing talent from all over the world. These two axes of work has been the main disruptive changes in the company in the last 2 years. And this has provoked a lot of changes in the way we work. From one side, the decision-making process is totally different. So we now have, in the medical world, we have two large divisions, the therapeutic solutions and endoscopic solutions. Solutions division was moved to Boston and 3 years ago. So all the management and the main teams for that business is now managed from Boston. The decision place is Boston. That's the Westboro building that you probably have seen if you drive around. But in generally speaking, I think that the management has diversified significantly. So the decision process doesn't reside anymore in Japan as it used to be in the past, and in a much more globalized decision-making process. The second big change has been in the fact that, I mean, to be in the medical technology world, you really need to understand the needs of the healthcare systems and the needs of the customers, and you really need to develop products that are able to fix existing problem, right? So the quest for the unmet need, I think, is an absolute must in medical technology, especially for a company like us, where we are not a commodity products company. I mean, we compete based on value, and so this is very important. And the biggest change in that area is that Olympus has been traditionally a technology company, technology and manufacturing company. And most of the decisions were based on our technology capabilities and based also in internal capabilities. So we were developing the products that our R&D team knew how to develop, which is a strong limitation, right? Because that limits yourself into a very specific set of skills. So the changes in the last, not only to probably be a few more years, but the main changes is that we've changed that approach. And instead of developing products from a technology orientation, we've been developing products much more focused on what kind of disease we want to treat, what kind of problem we want to fix, and working much closer with the medical providers, physicians, but also healthcare providers in order to make sure that the product fits their needs, right? That's a fundamental shift, right? So from a focus on technology to focus on diseases. And that's definitely something that it's much more easy to say than to do when you have 100 years of history of very successful manufacturing and R&D development based on pure technology, right? So this requires a shift and requires for us to incorporate other functions that the company didn't have developed in the past, or at least didn't have developed at scale. And I'm thinking in for example, our business development team, which is now a global team. I mean, 3 years ago was almost not existing. We have very few people there because inorganic growth was not considered as a key priority. Now is a key priority. In the last 18 months, we've closed 5 acquisitions. And now we understand if we want to provide a solution for the unmet needs, our technology is not always sufficient. Our technology is very important and it's crucial for our success, but not always sufficient. So we need to look for outside the company for how to complement those technologies. We also have invested massively in the medical affairs function, right? So in order to, again, we had a very powerful engineering team, but we needed as well, literally, doctors that can help us to strategize on what is the real need in the marketplace and for the healthcare provider. So I think that the biggest shift of the company has been to transition from really an engineering firm into a medical device franchise.
Let's talk about those two areas, the M&A focus. You mentioned the companies you acquired in GI endotherapy, you acquired ARC, in urology, Meditate, in respiratory, you acquired Veran Medical Technologies, surgical, Quest Photonic Devices. Give me a sense, are you where you need to be with M&A? Are these the building blocks you'll be working with going forward for the next year or so? Or are you going to continue with this trend? Am I going to have another PowerPoint slide I'm looking at a year from now with 5 more companies on it?
We continue working. I think that the M&A is definitely part of our growth engine. We don't look at M&A as a goal. We look at M&A as a need, right? So I think that we have very clear view what do we want to know, where do we want to be, and what kind of areas we want to provide value. And as I say, for those to do this job, I mean, in some cases we need technologies or we need solutions. That means that we will continue exploring opportunities in M&A. Now, not only that, right? So our investors are expecting, in this very aggressive market, they're expecting a significant growth that goes beyond what the market is growing. So I think M&A also have to provide opportunities for not only to bring additional technologies or complement technology, but also for growth, and eventually even to expand our areas of influence, right? So we are also open as well. We have a very strong position in certain areas. But we are also looking for opportunities in order to expand to other areas where, again, we can make a difference. And if this is coming through M&A, that's welcome as well. So we're very open. As I say, M&A follows the purpose, not vice versa. I mean, we don't do M&A just by M&A. So we want M&A to really complement our strategy. But we are working aggressively on a number of targets. I think this... I mean, you know well that I think the M&A world is pretty hot right now. There is a lot of activity going on in many different fronts. It's not easy. It's not easy to identify reasonable targets, but definitely, if we speak in a year from now, I hope we can add some more marks in that slide of additional activity.
No, for sure. With the IPO market being what it has been and the availability of SPACs, it certainly gives these companies other options. So you answered the question, but I just kind of want to circle back on it. So you have leadership positions in the areas you're in. So it makes sense if you really want to achieve significant growth that you need to move into an adjacent area, at least, if not a completely different market.
In most of the areas where we are in, I mean, we like to play in areas where we, as I say, where we can make a significant difference, medical is adding value. And when you do that, normally it's because you are number one, number two, or a very aggressive number three position. This is where we are in almost in all the areas where we play. Even in with such a leadership position, we still believe that there is opportunities in those areas because some of those diseases. Last week we were having an investor day, and we're talking, for example, about lung cancer. Still there's a lot that we can do, and there's a lot that technology still can provide in lung cancer. So even if we are at this point, we are the leading company to provide the staging and position of the cancer in the lungs. I think still there are opportunities to develop more technology that can help physicians to do a better job and identify early enough those tumors that can be treated, right? So even in the areas where we are leaders today, there are opportunities to do more and to contribute more. But we are looking at the adjacencies as well, right? So I think that there is definitely, we are not close to anything. I think that we have a very strong relations with in the specialties we have been for many years, and that provides us a very good access in the market. So if we can identify additional diseases or additional technologies that can treat the specific diseases that we can help with, we will happily incorporate that into the discipline because we have an ecosystem which is already providing the access to the customers, and anything we can add would make sense. But the North Star will always be to really be able to make some significant medical difference. We're not a Me Too products company. This is not our DNA. I mean, it's that's not what we know how to do. We want to be in spaces where we really can add some differentiation and some more medical value, which would not existing today.
Let's talk a bit about the venture program that you started. What is its mission? Is it to identify those smaller acquisitions that could be tucked in, or is it to produce a return? What is the function of the venture program?
I think that it's the traditional, mission of a corporate venture fund, right? So I think financial return point of view, obviously we have expectation that this will be financially sound, but this is not the main reason for us to get into the venture fund, right? So there is a couple of strong reasons. I mean, there is a phenomenal ecosystem of startups that move super fast and identify trends much faster than large companies because they have the ability to pivot much quicker than we have. Reason number one is that we want to be part of that ecosystem. We want to have a specific team, which is observing what's going on, capturing trends, and making decisions early enough about what are the areas that we want to penetrate or to have a stake of interest on that. That's number one. Number two, definitely no question that we see this as a potential pipeline generator for M&A. I think that we want to work with companies that and to take a stake in companies that we believe might be interesting for our purpose. If nobody knows at the beginning of the relation, but definitely in companies which are in sectors or in specialties which are interesting or are strategic fits for us. So we get to know them. Eventually, we can help them to grow, and at some point, we might acquire them. So I think that the possibility of generate tuck-ins and BD pipeline is also another strong motivation for that. So I would say clearly understanding of where the world is going and have a very premium seat on what's going on is one of the main goals, and the second one is to generate a significant additional pipeline for a future BD.
And two more questions. I wanted to just circle back. You mentioned the changes to your sort of R&D and engineering approach team. If I understood correctly, you brought in physicians to sort of bring more of a clinical perspective into that process. What happened in the R&D and engineering side of the business?
I mean, our R&D and engineering has been very powerful machines for many decades, and they continue to be, right? So I think what we are doing is complementing their know-how with medical experts. I mean, our R&D folks, of course, they know medical technology, but they know medical technology from engineering point of view. So we wanted to make sure that we complement them with the medical view. So in that sense, in the last 24 months, we've hired a significant amount of doctors, which are now part of our organization, and that they work very close with the business units in order to develop the right strategies. And in order to do that, we need to understand, again, For a company like us that likes to focus in making that difference in a specific diseases, we need to understand very well those diseases. Mm-hmm. And we need to understand what is the unmet need in detail. And this is the value that we are providing. So through that, we can take much more accurate and aimed decisions about where to invest, right? So I think what are the areas where we have to invest, where we're going to make a larger difference. At the end of this, obviously, the R&D group have to take these ideas and make them reality, right? So, or our BD team have to identify where are the potential inorganic opportunities to do that. But the starting point of our strategic business planning process is definitely the business unit together with our medical team work together and to say, okay, these are the areas, these are the diseases where there is clearly an unmet need that we can fix. And we already have some positioning there, some technology that can help. So let's do more, let's develop more in order to bring that solution to the market. I think this is the fundamental change versus the Olympus of 10 years ago. And I think from an R&D point of view, this is and will continue being a key asset for us. I mean, our R&D and manufacturing is as I say, a very well-oiled, strong machine that is a key asset for us. We just need to complement them and make sure that they devote their time and efforts in the right direction. I think that's the key.
Great. Last question. Looking forward, what does Olympus look like in a few years? What sort of attributes or characteristics do you want us to assign to Olympus as you continue to move deeper into medtech and to expand your footprint?
Well, I think we have a very clear view on that. And our goal is to elevate the standard of care in specific diseases. And we know we cannot change everything, but we feel that we know we can make a significant difference in some specific diseases and procedures. And that's what we are doing right now. We are acting in some areas. We intend to work in others. And I think the way we would like to be recognized in years to come is definitely a company that have been able to add value to the medicine in treating some specific, very complex and very painful diseases like colon cancer, lung cancer, BPH. And there are many areas where a lot of patients are suffering from this around the world. And we can alleviate a little bit that pain or try to help in the process too, in the care pathway to bring them back to their life, right? So I think this is how we would like to be recognized. I think it's part of our mission as a company, and we take it seriously, right? This concept of making a difference, and we want to make a very significant difference in the areas where we can. We cannot do it everywhere, but what we need to identify and select where we can make a difference and then be very significant for patients, right? So at the end of the day, I always think that at the end of all these discussions that we have and all these engineering discussions, and at the end there is a patient. And the end there is someone which is going to be treated with our technology. And this is a very serious thing. That's, if we think about it, that someone can be our mother or father, a family member, a relative, a friend. And then I think we have to take this very serious, and we do. And we want to really contribute to the well-being of the society and of the people. That's the way we would like to be recognized as a medical device company. We are already doing that. We want to do that at a larger scale and keep expanding our impact.
Fantastic. Well, it's been a pleasure to meet you, to talk to you, and thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you, Tom. My pleasure to be here, and stay in touch.
All right, well, that is a wrap. Chris Newmarker, it's great to be back on the podcast saddle again with you in 2022.
Good to be back, man.
Where can folks find you out there in the social media world?
I'm on LinkedIn, Chris Newmarker, just like a Newmarker. You can find me on Twitter as well, at Newmarker.
Fantastic. And I am on Twitter at MedTech Tom. I am on LinkedIn, Tom Salemi. Please do connect with Chris and myself. Please do connect with our LinkedIn pages for our publications, right? We're doing pretty well in building our online community on LinkedIn for Mass Device. And of course, for Device Talks.
Absolutely. I mean, we've built it into an audience in the tens of thousands for our sites. And yeah, I definitely, if you want to get a good, I mean, I I'm biased, of course, but I'm not just tooting my own horn here. I mean, just honestly, we're posting, you go to like something like Mass Device. I mean, we're posting like, half a dozen, different like top medtech news stories a day at least, so, following us on LinkedIn is a great way to just stay up to date on, what's going on in the medical device space. And you can get deeper dives on medical design outsourcing, page. We got, drug delivery business news, if you want to find about diabetes devices and all these infusion devices, and also not mentioning, drug discovery and development, where our former editor Brian Bunce has, written some really insightful stories. So there's there's a wealth of things, a feast of things to check out.
We had our editorial staff on display in the final episode of last year. I thought Brian and Danielle Kirsch and Sean Hooley, and of course yourself, and I'll add myself to the list, did a nice job with our stories of the year. I thought that was a interesting discussion. So folks, if you didn't listen to that, please do check it out. But share this podcast episode, if you would, on social media.
It's a great team. I just feel so fortunate. We got, I think we got a really great group of people here, and I'm looking forward as well. Our managing editor Jim Hammerand is going to be returning from parental leave like next week, so it'll be great as well. So we got a really good team. That's
great. So please do share this podcast episode on those social media channels. Please do subscribe to the Device Talks podcast. You'll not only get this podcast,
like, follow, subscribe.
You'll also get Intuitive Talks, and we'll just say a podcast that will be named later. It's coming up and it'll be super exciting. So please do not delay. Subscribe and follow the Device Talks Weekly podcast, and do the same for Medtronic Talks. It's a great podcast, and it has its own channel, and you should be tracking one of the leaders in the medtech industry as well. So that is a wrap. Thanks again for joining us on this episode of the Device Talks Weekly podcast. Tune in next week. We'll have another great episode waiting for you.
2022, let's rock it.